Hi there. Thanks for joining us. Another episode of Spiritual Insights with Michael Mirdad. We're going to talk about chakras and the human energy systems. It's beautiful. I mean, when I think about chakras and the energy systems of life, our body, the earth, if people could just see these kinds of things, it's why some people take certain drugs to psychedelics to make them see all these incredible things. The only problem is when you're using synthetic means or when you're using exterior means to stimulate the view, you're to a degree you're seeing something because the veil has been thinned through certain type of psychotropics or hallucinogenics or whatever it happens to be. So to a degree, you're seeing what's there because the veil of eyes has been thinned. But there's too much risk also that you're doing damage to the brain to get that other thing to happen. When you can see auras and energy systems and chakras and all that organically, which can only, organically doesn't mean an organic, hallucinogenic. Organic means it is organic. Your consciousness is of that subtlety, that consciousness. Therefore, you see those things of that realm because your mind is of a high enough realm to see it. Now, that said, I first of all, I never talk about it myself, almost ever, things I see and what I've seen and because people then they sort of pin that stuff on a teacher. Wow, isn't he special because he can do this and that? If I like people just they like what I'm saying and they get it and they apply it, they live it, they shift, they don't, whatever, that's their thing. When you tell people about your magical skills, let's call them, you're attracting people because of those rather than because of the effectiveness of what you're teaching. That's really contrary to Jesus, Buddha, and so on. Why did Jesus say heal yourselves when he got a little bit to the like wanting to make a point to people who are trying to put this all on him? Like it's like lighten up, get what I'm telling you, and then you'll be able to do this rather than putting it on me. He's saying that. Buddha said somewhat the same thing all too often, and so ever so clearly. So that's the first thing is, I don't stand around, bragging about those kinds of things, but also I don't want you to make it an idol, a goal. Oh my God, he's talking about the colors and if only, and I want that. That happens organically with consciousness, but being a nice person is better than seeing purple with your third eye. It really is. So get to priorities straight. Um, so let's look at this now. Even though I just probably turned you off to wanting to know about chakras and energy systems, it's not a turn off at all. I'm saying there's a beauty to it. If you can just appreciate the beauty of it, not the phenomena, not the colors, not the wow, I'm better because I see them, I'm better than someone else, but just the love. So look at it this way. Nothing compares to the pure light essence of God. Nothing. Not the prettiest red, orange, yellow, green, etc. None of those colors, even a rainbow of them all, doesn't compare to pure light. Because colors are perceptible to your eyes because they have come through the veil into your illusion of life. So you can see them with your senses. Real light is something you feel, know, experience, not see. So don't get too caught up in I can't wait till I see purple. It's more like, wow, I'm feeling so much love. And love can take any color form. But if we use the traditional charts, it's the heart chakra. And the heart chakra, based on the 7-color ray, is green. In Hindu traditions, many Far Eastern traditions, it's pink, which is also very apropos if you think about it. Pink, color of friendship, color of love, and so on. So it's quite beautiful. But let's just now launch into the whole thing. First of all, in God, there's just a sense of pure light. it's consciousness, it's bliss, it's love, but it's just pure light. It's beyond the color spectrum by far. So far beyond that the human brain can't even understand it. It's a color that's so brilliant, but you can feel it. It's like shimmering sparkles if you could perceive it, but if you don't let yourself perceive it and instead go to the high, even higher than any extra sensory perception, it's something that's magnificent. Those are the words that come to mind. You go to the other side, people say, I saw this tunnel when I passed away temporarily. I had a near-death experience, and there was this tunnel and this brilliant light, and there was such love in the light. They're describing light, but they're going, the light was so warm and safe and loving. It's like, wait, it's not red, orange. What are you talking about? It is beyond. It's beyond perception, human perception, and well into divine feelings. So there's that. Now, let's just say that this is God here. And that is all there, that beautiful light, that presence, and so on. And even the light that people see when they temporarily pass over and then go, wow, even that is not actually yet God-like. It's still kind of just halfway there. So understand how far apart, how removed we are from the real brilliance. But anyway, that generically, we'll call that all heaven, all light, and so on. Now, imagine, though, that when we decided we wanted to create and experience a three-dimensional realm, a realm of dimensionality at all, beyond three or otherwise, but a realm of dimensionality, a realm of variations. In God, there is none. It's just oneness. But we wanted to go experience variations for reasons I won't go into. So when that happened, that which is one and one light, suddenly, for you to go somewhere else, we had to go, let's say I go from left to right. There's here, the oneness of God, and then you want to go somewhere else. Or you're here and you go somewhere else. Well, when you go, there has to be some sort of a membrane or veil between this and that. So that veil is what you would call a prism, light. It's where light gets blown into variations. So there's the pure light of God. One day the children of God said, we're going to journey into a universe that we're going to create. So boom, the Big Bang takes place. A veil is created to separate the made-believe world of mankind and the real world of God. That veil here acts as a prism. And the light of God hits that prism and enters the world that we live in, the universe. If it didn't, you would not have tones and overtones, octaves. You wouldn't have sounds, colors. You wouldn't have variations. And you think, well, no wonder we're afraid of going home, the concept of being afraid to go home. Because everything would be obliterated. All these colors and variations and so on. Here's how this works. In God, there's this something so far beyond understanding, people don't know that it's love that surpasses understanding. But it's also like color that surpasses understanding. When Mozart, Beethoven, when certain artists, they get an idea, just like I get inspirations to do a talk. An artist and whatnot, musician, they hear sounds, these guys, Beethoven, Mozart. These guys would say, never, never, ever have I been able to translate what I hear onto paper. And I think it's beautiful. I mean, it's sure as hell is frustrating. I'm hearing, oh my God, wow, never works. Okay, and they get frustrated. They have that artist torment. Not the wannabe artist torment, the ones that want to pretend that they're all just tortured artists. That becomes like some, gratuitous little game they play. I'm talking about the real thing. An artist that does tap in and really wants to bring that here now and doesn't know how because you can't. So I remember one artist telling me, painter, saying, what I do to accomplish it is you stop thinking in terms of pigments and you start thinking of painting in light. And as soon as this artist said that, I knew they were right. I knew because I could hear it and see it and feel it myself, and yet wasn't sure how an artist was going to translate that. So I was like, wow, I hear these things and I think a lot of times I get visions constantly, mind you, constantly visions of things that can be, inventions, everything from who's going to win a ball game to what invention's going to come out. Before there were websites that came to me, before there were, social media that came to me, um, you know, um, keyless cars. I remember seeing that way back. And I tried to explain it to people, and they're like, well, that seems kind of weird. What would you do? You'd need a key. Aren't you used to having a key? And so on. It's just funny. And it doesn't always translate. And it's hard to know how to translate it because you get concepts. You get like, there's a picture, and these art musicians would get a sound, a song, and then not know how to bring that forward. People do drug trips and they don't know how to bring that through, but they try. Sometimes it became a song. Many of psychedelic type songs in the past, also many psychedelic art forms in the past. Some came from an organic experience and some from a synthetic version of an experience. So what happens is light goes through that prism called the veil, and then it refracts into 7 rays into the human plane. And this gets a little complicated, so let me be quick with it. And then each of the rays is ruled by what we call Elohim. Elohim is a name for the plural gods. Not God, but as soon as God refracts in the veil into 7 aspects of God, they call it the 7 spirits before the throne in the Bible. So these 7 spirits before the throne of God, before the throne, they're here at the gate, at the foot, of God. They're not God anymore. They're an expression of God, taking 7, variations, and each of those is like a red, orange, yellow, blue, and so on, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. So there's those, and then they also merge with each other. So the one ray would say to the other, let's you and I work to create this kingdom. Another 2 might join for that. 3 of them might join for that. Other times one works in one way and another. So those 7 rays create. So in other words, it's 7 colors that paint on the pigment called the universe. Paint pigments onto the universe, onto the canvas of the universe. So these rays become pigments which become perceptible colors. That's what we see. We're seeing the effect, the result of this creation process. All right, now each of those 7 rays has a sound. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. And then it goes to another level of that. New octave or whatever, of that. So this is creation. Now, I mention that to point out that I am a child of God. Now picture this, guys. Not only in the creation story from here to there, but from here inside to there. Everything that has ever happened in the universe is microcosmically happening within me. People will talk about chakras. Oh, let's talk about chakra. Oh, I might have a heart chakra. Oh, my crown is open and my heart's open. They don't even understand what chakras are. They see pictures of them. And they go, ooh, neat. My heart's open, my chakras. Ooh, I have color. I bet I have colorful chakras. It's also fad-like. Very, very little understanding from people of what chakras really are. And there's a book here and there, only a few in history that ever really understood what chakras are. Then some of those books are going to sound varied from one school of thought system to another. Why are they varied? Why do some of them say, well, here's a chakra, and instead of going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, why do some of them go 1 and then over to the side, 2, and then 3, 4? Why do some of them say the spleen is a chakra as an organ? The spleen is related to a chakra, and others do not. It's actually all true, but they don't know how to bridge conversations. So people, especially the students of these teachers that sort of mess it up a little bit, the students start becoming real religious about it and saying, well, the color of this chakra is actually this. I mean, I've seen authors come out and say, everybody's wrong. Everybody's wrong. The chakras are actually, and they make up a completely different chart. And that's because that's how they see it, not because it's how it is. So generally, try to go with the generally agreed upon. Start with that. I'm not saying it's exactly right, but start with that. There are going to be some exceptions to the rule. For example, when energy flows up your chakras, like the Kundalini, we call it, when the Kundalini or the serpent, the Shakti, is flowing up the chakras, it really doesn't just flow up the chakras. There's a center meridian, you could call it, a center channel of energy moving up the Kundalini. And then there's also two other that move up the right and the left, like so, and sort of coil themselves up. This is where we get the picture of your staff with the caduceus in medicine. Because medicine, as it ever started way, way back, it was holistic. Now they shouldn't even be allowed to use the symbol. That just doesn't even make sense. It would be like, using a poster of Adolf Hitler as a symbol, the poster child for equal rights, or something. It makes no sense at all. Or a KKK member, for equal rights. It's like ludicrous. So you seeing medicine use the symbol of holism, awakening. I mean, look at it. It's this rod of light with the serpent up the sides, and then at the top there's this ball, which means your divine chakras all awakened, and then the two wings out the side of it. Those wings represent, well, several things, but the wings represent in this case mostly the two petaled lotus of the third eye awakening, because it's like a petal each direction. And so it sometimes is seen as wings and sometimes as lotus petals, rose petals to some. So, it's all kind of strange and ludicrous that people don't really get it. But there are some exceptions that aren't agreed by everybody. And one of those would be, just as an example, energy flows up our Kundalini, and everybody's, again, the fads. Everybody hanging out at Whole Foods and New Age stores are going, oh, energy, it goes up the chakras and then it blasts out your crown and then you're enlightened. That's not true at all. Yes, if you're enlightened, your chakras would be open like that. But you might have just a moment of enlightenment where the chakras kind of awaken like that. That's kind of nice. But they don't stay like that forever. They don't. They can stay awakened, but the energy doesn't just go and blast out. Where's it going? And doesn't it eventually deplete? You don't walk around looking like a perpetual firework fountain. It's a breath. It's because you have today. You got to live. Beings that are ascended masters would have this kind of shimmery effect constantly. But in the third dimension, it doesn't really look like that very often. It looks more like a pulsation, awakening and calming and awakening and calming. And the energy that does come up, if it does indeed activate your crown, that's great. But in the most advanced teachings, not the ones where the people are sitting around going, wow, man, my third eye open, it's not them that would know this. They're going by kind of like basics, chakra basic learning. Those who are more advanced teachers and ancients actually taught that the Kundalini goes up and then flows over the forehead. Flows over and then back down. So it's a loop. It comes up, flows over, and comes back down. This is what was symbolized when King David was writing the 23rd Psalm, my cup runneth over. So he's saying, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me, meaning the God presence running through your center. It's even though I'm walking through the valley of the shadow of death, meaning even though I'm walking through my initiations of myself, I will not fear because God is with me. That rod of God running through my center, my core, comforts me. And then he goes later on into, my cup runneth over, God leads me beside the still waters. That's the stillness of meditation. And, my cup runneth over. It's the energy reaches the top and then pours over. This is also why many headdresses have that curl, like in Tibetan Buddhism. It's also why pharaohs have the band around the head and then a cobra here, the serpent here, because it symbolizes that they are high priests of spirituality, and they know how to bring energy up and that it flows over the top. That's the idea with that. So that was symbolized in a lot of places, but people forget what that all symbolized. Why this 23rd Psalm was saying this, why the pharaohs had headdresses like that, and so on and so on. So it's not quite what people think. Even to say petals, yeah, it looks like petals in the sense that 4 petals, 6 petals, and so on. The various petals of the each chakra becoming more and more petals. Boom, 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 from 4 all the way up to what they call the 1,000-petaled lotus, which is the one in the crown. If you ever see most statues of Buddha, he has this odd-looking cap, it looks like a shower cap from the 60s, that your mom, like a swimming cap. Really one of those tight, it looks like the Jolly Green Giant's skull cap. And if you look closely at statues, it's actually each one of those sections of the cap are these little spirals everywhere. Because what it's saying is it's 1,000-petaled lotus. It means they're not petals because they don't all originate from one spot like a flower. But it's saying 1,000-petaled lotus because each of those is a spiral of energy. So it means this person is really their consciousness, their skull. Their consciousness, there's an awakened activity that's happened. But then it's kind of ironic because you start it with 4 petals and you move all the way up to 1,000, and yet the one here is 2 petals. It's like, well, they kind of forgot the progression of counting or something. But they didn't, because the third eye is, in a sense, unique. It doesn't go from numerous petals, numerous, and then gets to the third eye, 2, and then the 1,000. What it does is it goes from 4 to more, 1,000, then 2, because it pours over the top. Now, again, I know that's challenging because everybody wants it to be real linear, and it goes here, 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 here. But in fact, it's up and over. So, and another way to kind of resolve that is that your third eye and crown really work together. When one gets activated, the other is already happening. So it really is okay whether you want to think of it as the 6th chakra, 7th chakra, or the 6th, 7th. It doesn't matter because those both get activated at the same time. They represent the Father and Mother God within us. Now, taking another little course in this, a little direction. I don't mean a course like a lesson, but a different course of action. The concept of that which God is, here's God, and then there's this refraction into light. The same thing recurs in me. In me is God, and then light comes out. Just like light gets refracted into the universe, as light comes out, it refracts in me. The way I know that, and you know that in me or in each other, is that it becomes our 7 chakras. So, God will be experienced as 7 rays interacting. 7 colors, 7 rays, and it makes up all what we can perceive in the color spectrum. And so what happens then is that when I'm coming from my inside out, for me to experience the outside world, I have to have some bridge as well. The light, in pure light, is within me, deep within me, that we've forgotten, just like we've forgotten God's light. What we know to be light refracted is what we get now. It's our bridge home. So the chakras are my interaction with the world. The chakras are not just sitting on your body. They are actually coming from the center of your being, God self, and they kind of open and close. They pulse like this. Slightly opening, slightly closing. Sometimes really open, even in an unhealthy way. And sometimes completely shut in an unhealthy way. They're supposed to just kind of pulse. Too much, frozen open, frozen closed, not so good. So I have energy systems, but it all starts in the core of my being, all of us, in the core of our being. And then what starts to happen is, as I come into this material world, this universe, I started historically densifying until I finally took on a body, and then those bodies started reproducing more bodies. But also, energetically, each and every day, I have more than a physical self. I have 7 layers of bodies. I have a dense body, an astral body, I have an etheric body, I have a mental body. I have several layers of bodies that make up what you see. You can only see the dense part of me, and yet there's more to be seen if you had the eyes to see. Those who have the eyes to see, right? And not only do I have 7 layers of aura, I also have 7 chakras, and obviously they correspond. Now, the 7 chakras, what are they? Well, gosh, guys, they're most importantly, they're my states of consciousness, because I have a physical state of consciousness, an emotional astral state of consciousness, an intellectual mental state of consciousness. I have a heart creative sense, state of consciousness, and so on. I have a state of consciousness with each of these. You don't just have chakras, and then you also have a chakra with each major gland, corresponding to each gland. So you have the reproductive glands, let's say, for the root chakra. And yet some people will be out there saying, oh, the root chakra, it represents your survival. And then your sexual chakra is your second chakra. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. You could say that there's some correlation slightly to the second chakra being sexual. And if that's what you want to believe, it's okay. Do what you want. I'm just saying, use your common sense. Your sexual organs are the root, so why wouldn't they be the root chakra, the sexual chakra? And your emotional chakra is your water chakra, your navel center. Water, it's emotions. Your mind, your mental chakra is your fire center, your solar plexus. And people say, no, fire is emotion. No, fire is only one emotion, known as anger. But emotions, most emotions are just, they're like water. They come and go and they shift and they take the shape of any vessel and so on. Fire is actually, it's called your solar plexus because of the fire there. And this is the second most complex area of nerves in the body, shy of the brain. So it is basically, some people call it even the abdominal brain, because it is like a brain. And there's a lot more to that I can explain that I can't get into here, but it's like an abdominal, it's my torso brain. But I have another one here. Think about this. Because my heart is below my head, why wouldn't I want my heart to be higher than my thinking head? This is why. My heart is actually above my solar plexus version of my thinking head. See, that's the mental chakra, the lower mind. This is the higher mind, the heart. So my heart is appropriately over my head and does rule over my head. The thing up here is you could say it's in its own world. The upper 3 chakras. Yes, your brain happens to be there, but it's your upper 3 chakras. This is the symbol of heaven. I think I'm a human, which is my torso, and I think of God as being up in the heavens. But if I think I'm my torso, my human self, look what it means to say I'm looking to the heavens to God. I'm looking up to the heavens to God, and I'm praying for guidance. Where exactly? Can you point? What are you looking up and praying to? You're actually, when you look up, you're following a compulsion to look up because you think you're this, the human self. You think you're your body and emotions and mind, the lower self. You think you're your lower torso chakras, metaphorically. And so when you want to pray, you look up because it's a way of interpreting the fact that your soul knows I'm looking up because God within me is found here, up in the heavens. Okay? There's so much I could say about this, man, but wanting to also satisfy those that are just into chakras, the chakras are connected to each gland and relate to the organs of that section of the body as well. So, for example, your third chakra is ruled by the color. You go red, orange, yellow would be the third. That's why some people would say citrine, which is a yellow crystal, is kind of good for digestion. Set it on your stomach, it helps this and that and the other. Because they're saying really it's the citrine, but it's also the color yellow. because that's the natural color for that chakra in terms of color spectrum. And so the chakra is your adrenals, but your chakra is also related to the organ, your stomach, your spleen, liver and so forth. That segment of the body, as opposed to the organs, sexual organs in the root chakra, or lungs and so forth in the heart chakra. So there's organs, glands, and chakras in each segment of the body. So it's kind of cool knowing that the chakras are more than just pretty colors on a chart. They symbolize so much, but most importantly, they symbolize your states of consciousness. You don't just have lungs and a heart, and even a heart chakra. You have a consciousness related to this. If you didn't have the consciousness, this couldn't exist. If you didn't have a root consciousness, you wouldn't have a root chakra. When you no longer believe in having human body and you won't have human glands. And when you don't have human glands, you won't have chakras. You'll be back into light that doesn't have to reflect anymore, into prism, reflections. So what's really fascinating, if you understand that chakras are, picture then, as I sit here, picture chakras and understand that the colors found in each chakra should be clean colors, not muddy. They shouldn't be dark nor muddy. They should be kind of clean and feel good, look good. And if the chakras are healthy, the organs and the glands in that segment of the body are going to be healthy. So some people could have, and you get it coming and going, because if something's damaging the chakra, it can damage the organs and the glands. Even mischievous entities can mess with those chakras. And therefore download disease and problems into the body. But you get it coming and going. So problems in the body will also reflect into the chakras. So, it's kind of an interesting thing. So our overall holistic health, it's a funny thing because medicine cannot actually deal with people properly because they can't deal with them holistically. And then if you deal with them holistically and all you're doing is like I give you herbs instead of medicines or synthetic medicines, it sounds more holistic, but it isn't, because whole means whole, not part. And if it's whole, then talk to me about my emotions today, doctor, instead of, only medicine or only chemical imbalances, my chemistry. Talk to me about everything if it's holistic. Do you see chakras? No? Okay, well, that seems odd. If you're holistic, you should be able to see them. At least try, at least sense them on some level. I'm not saying you're a bad doctor if you can't see chakras. I'm just saying holistic is holistic. A true healer would be able to see auras and chakras and be able to be an intuitive, do it intuitive medicine. And so on. It's all a whole experience. Emotions, energy systems. So what happens, as I'm going to take one last direction here, is that if you were to see me beaming into the world, what you see first is a one with God. You can't even see that. There's no way. You can't even perceive it with anything of your human nature. But then as I start to, let's pretend I'm going to go straight from God into the material world. Here's how it would have to happen. I would go from pure light, oneness, imperceptible. Then I would notch it down, my vibration, my frequency, notch it down. Now I start to become perceptible on a high level of perception, which would be like beautiful sphere colors, shimmering sparkles. Wow, so cool, this beautiful ball of light, let's call it. And it beams light, but it also shimmers light. That's kind of what the soul looks like. And the soul doesn't look like a person who's dead. That's not a soul. That's the ghost of the person, which is the soul choosing to still kind of look like what they did so that people who see it would understand who they're looking at. But that's not what the soul actually looks like. It's almost like the soul putting on a costume of the previous incarnation. Okay? That's just an aside. Now, instead, the soul keeps just notching down to become more and more visible. Now, the soul, let's pretend the soul is going to just become a physical body. It's going to materialize. For it to materialize, it's going to not just go from pure light to skin. It's going to go from this beautiful shimmering light. Then you're going to start noticing it starts taking on, I see this all shimmering beautiful light. Then on the sphere of light, I start to notice, first lightly and then more dramatically, these colors like buttons up through that sphere of light. The buttons, then I notice a rod of light also connecting those seven. So I notice this rod of light and these seven beautiful colors, which will become chakras. Just like there's parts of an embryo that become organs and so forth, right? It's kind of like that. It starts to form. And so the seven chakras and the rod of light and the sphere of light, that's what's there. It starts to materialize and you look carefully. It's hard to see, but you can look carefully and you would start seeing lines running from one of the chakras, not just the core down the middle, but you start to see lines running through the whole ball of light and all the sparkles. I don't know what the lines are doing, but they kind of look like telephone lines or strands of some kind, and like nerves. And those will start to turn into light, like colored lights, strands. Not lights on them yet, first just lights. And those would become meridians. The meridians, then you'll start to see little sparkles along the meridians. Those become acupuncture points. What will eventually be known as acupuncture points. Right now, they're just little dots of light. Those strands of light will eventually become nerves in your nervous system. The bar of light will become a central nervous system and your spine and so on. All these things are going to materialize into something. And those strands of light, see, in Chinese medicine, you never actually say, how's your liver or how's your spleen? Your spleen isn't just a thing and a liver isn't just a thing. They are the whole strand of light. So a meridian is the liver. The organ and the meridian is the liver. And it's never just the organ. It's the whole liver. It's the whole meridian. And when they talk about a truly Oriental medicine, when they're talking about these things, they're going to say not even just how's the organ or how's the meridian. They're talking about it like it's an entity almost. Your kidney is weak and yet it's damp. And it's this and yet that, and then there's and they're doing the pulse reading to kind of tune into them. So it's pretty fascinating if you think about it, but the meridians become nerves and so on. Now, the organs start to form on those strands and everything starts to tighten up and kind of consolidate instead of just this glowy, floaty kind of sparkles. Everything's starting to shape a little more consolidated. Now you're going to start to take from round to like an egg shape, and then from the egg shape even more and more slendering up like a column. And now much more clear, the chakras appear, and much more clear the meridians, and it's very obvious. And then pretty soon the nerves, and then over the nerves we have, other things formulating. You've got tissue, you've got muscles, you've got calcification, you've got bones, densification of bones, and then of course skin. I'm not telling you exactly which one forms first because some of these are forming at the same time, but it's just to give an example. So what now you see is me sitting here, and I look like I have X number, amount of color of hair or a color of skin or a color of eyes or whatever. But there's so much more to me, to you, to everyone than meets the eye. Animals included, plants included. There's a life, a whole energy. It's like it's a power plant, each of these things. The earth also has these power plant chakras and meridians and so on. And that's why, like when we do, we have a 4-day intensive on Christ consciousness coming up. And one of the things we often talk about in that course are meridians and ley lines and how to go to different sites on the planet and do what we call grid work. Ley lines and grid lines, they're various terms for it, but that's when they're really meridians. So you go to minor or major chakra sites on the planet and you do the work because she's an entity, and when you do your grid work, you're actually acting like a spiritual acupuncturist who's bringing healing to the earth body. Mind you, she does pretty well. She knows how to keep herself healthy one way or the other. But when we do our work, we're not just trying to balance her earth systems, her water systems, her mineral systems, water, and so on. What we're doing is we're saying that's all just fine and dandy, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call in the presence of Christ and infuse the earth mother with energy of Christ. She loves it because it's like when her children, she gave birth to them, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. She's part of the chemicals we're made up of, and she gave birth to us. But when we wake up spiritually and anchor light back to her, it's like mom seeing her child graduate. She's so proud, like, oh my God, I gave birth to you, and I only could hold a vision that you would get there and wake up. And I know you have because you came back and showed me your certificate, or whatever it is, meaning you've come back and you're giving me love. And I that's the greatest thing I could have imagined. You're coming back, and it's not like she's being the selfish mom that wants you to dote on her and kiss her feet, like the narcissist kind of mother. We're talking about a mother that says, you're giving back to me, which means you woke up and you understand that I'm an expression of the Divine Mother. I, the earth, am an expression of the Divine Mother. So when you come in and love me, you're actually tapping back into the Divine Mother, which, by the way, again, is one of your two upper chakras, the Father and the Mother. And so she gets that, but she's not going to just like, oh, I want all my children to kiss my feet and fan me. What she does is she says, go ahead, download some Christ energy. Great. Love it. Now you know what I'm going to do with it? Bring it to your brothers and sisters, places that they could use it. So she's just a total recycler, Okay, so the last but not least, the idea then is that all of that said, I have these chakras, but the startling thing, mind-boggling thing, this is all in my 7 Initiations on the Spiritual Path book. First book I ever wrote, and I love it still. 7 Initiations on the Spiritual Path. Its subtitle is Understanding the Purpose to Life's Events. And so what that book is trying to get across is everything you go through, every test, every experience, everything, it's not an external thing like you think it is. Everything you experience is your soul's attempt to test you on one chakra or another so that you can get to the point where your chakras are bright and clear. First, they go from human muddy and disjointed a bit to clear, just clear and clean. What am I talking about? Chakras, but also your states of consciousness. So we go from muddy state of consciousness and chakras to clear chakras and states of consciousness. But there's one more, and that is it all starts to become crystalline. Like, in other words, the chakra becomes like diamond-like each one, but that's far away for some people, but that's what happens. It's okay if they're still beautiful in colors. I'm just saying that inevitably they also go one more step up. But the tests are when your soul says, how you doing? I noticed that you're struggling with emotional stuff, relationship stuff, and so forth. Then the soul rather, is going to help you create some events where you can test your emotional self. So it brings in, maybe it's called the easy way or the hard way. The soul will either bring in tests for the emotional chakra related to like, hey, sweetheart, your soul says to the human self, what we ought to do is look into some counseling and some 12-step work and so forth to help work on your emotional self. You get on board, that was learning the easy way. If you don't, then the soul says, well, you don't seem to be wanting to understand what I'm telling you. You are messed up emotionally, and I want you to clean it up. When I say I, it's not a thing outside. This is our higher self. I want us to clean it up, which is the right thing to do. So then the soul says, all right, you're not getting it. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have one of your family members have a crisis to where they kind of lose their home or something, and they're going to move in. Why? Because family of origin is part of the emotional work you could have been doing with a counselor, but you chose not to do that. So I'm going to move them in. It's just kind of clever if you think about it. Or it'll be you don't listen and get into 12 steps, so the addiction gets the best of you and you break down, and so on. That's just an emotional center. Each center has its variations, and I explain those quite literally and explicitly in the 7 Initiations book. And I end each of those chapters with just a little synopsis of myself going through that, just to give people something tangible to relate to. But just imagine, each chakra has tests. Now, it doesn't mean you have a root chakra test, then a navel center, and up and up and up, and then crown chakra, and you're done. All of these are always being moved and manipulated and tested and shifted and micro-adjusted. And so, that's happening all the time. But all major events are related to some chakra, one or more chakras. And when you go through the dark night of the soul, many of you know the book I wrote on that. When you go through the dark night of the soul, it's the heart chakra that's being tested. By who? God? No. Angels? No. Your soul. You sign yourself up for the dark night of the soul. The human self likes to pretend it didn't know. It pleads ignorance. I didn't know, and oh my God, and had I known, no. It doesn't want to know. It wants to plead ignorance. It wants to mess around. But the soul knows. And the soul says, listen, it's time for us to do a cleanup, house cleaning, corporate cleanout, and bam, and then all these things hit you at once. Why? Because the soul is taking not one, but all the chakras at once and house cleaning them. So you have several different kinds of areas of your life getting all blown up at the same time. Quite a challenge, quite crazy making, really. I mean, it's just wow, like it just go through such hell in a way. But all is well. There's a reason for it. The heart knows reasons that the head knows not of. And that's how this works. So your heart, your soul is really well in charge. But last piece of that is that when the heart opens up even to something even greater still, not just your soul. Yeah, your humanness needs to open up to your soul, but your soul needs to open up to God. One day, you'll lie the human self down, not needing it anymore. Then one day, you'll be back to your soul. That's not the end. The soul then will lie itself down and surrender completely to the divine. And when we talk about your humanness, your soul, your divine, all of those are reflected in your chakras. So your throat chakra isn't your human self anymore. It's your Christ self. You are the spoken word of God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. That's the Christ self. And then, of course, the Father and Mother right up here, and they work collaboratively. But after you go through life initiations, after you go through dark night of the soul, you can, if you know how, you can make it to the next step, the light at the end of the tunnel, which is through this dark spot here, this line, the veil that we originally talked about. You will go through that dark tunnel, the last of it, out into the light at the end of the tunnel, reaching your Christ self, going, hallelujah, wow, this is great. And when you do, I'll say this much, you almost never want to come back, like people that pass over. You're like, oh my God, I totally get it. I just went through 3 years of hell, 1 year of hell, 5 years of hell, whatever it is. I'm waking up now, which not everybody does in the dark night. It's a choice you have to make. But I'm getting it, and wow, oh my God, totally brilliant. This is amazing. I understand how it all works now, and I'm good to just stay in this light. And the mother, the next chakra up, will hold you and say, oh, sweetheart, I'm so proud of you. You made it through all that heavy testing and all those challenging events in life. Yeah, Mom, oh man, it was so challenging. I know, sweetheart. Wipe the brow and clean you up. And what would you like? Like the way Mom might have made you something to eat or whatever, or cocoa or whatever, people like. I never had cocoa, but I hear people think that's cool. So something like that, right? And it's just beautiful. But then the Father is the last of the chakras. It's not the Father God literally. It's God as we know it in our perception of it, experience of it. So we go through the mother, then to the Father, and the Father says, how were you doing? How was your mom? Oh, Mom was great. Did she clean you up? Yeah, okay, great. Did you have a good snack? Oh, the best, so on and so on. Then the Father says, well, now I'm going to send you back. And in my experience, I was like, hell no. I woke up, man. I don't need any of this human stuff anymore. And it was one of the most challenging things, but I understood it. And that is God saying, I said you're going to go back. So picture it like the painting, the finger of God, the finger of man, bing, and you are sparked into life again. What that means, not just in between like one life to another, it means that I'm going to be given a new life, but I'm told, remember the Kundalini, it goes up and down. So up I go, heart chakra initiations, Christ initiations, hello mother, hello father, what? Back? What do you mean? Oh, and back you go. The big fall, down to your human self again, because the point is you only went through an enlightenment process of today. You're not completely done. You just are done with this period's series of tests. Good job. Now we got to send you back so that you can anchor all that new knowledge, the love, the growth, all that healing, forgiveness. Go bring it to your human self. And when you do, you're bringing it to everyone. And it's like, you got to be kidding me. There's a part of us that thinks that, like, man, can't I just stay in the love? No, but you can bring the love with you, and then you'll stay in the love that way. But you can't hide out in the love. There's a difference. Stay in the love by being the love. Try to hide out in the love, there's no such thing. Because how could you try to stay in the love by hiding out in the love when your brothers and sisters need something from you, some new level of knowledge or awareness? And so I know that students of mine that knew me in the 80s would see that I still teach the same things, more or less. That is to say, chakras, initiations, dark night of the soul, Christ consciousness, and so on. But it's very clear to them as well that, Michael, you in the 80s you taught it, but somehow in the 90s you became it. And that's honest to God, that's what did happen. I taught it. You can only teach it. You can't become it until you go through it. Then it becomes an integrated consciousness or process. You now become the thing you used to talk about. A person can be pregnant and talk about being a mother. She's not really it until she's gone through it. And I don't even mean for 3 days or 8 days. I mean, she has to really kind of go through it. And then you think she's done, she might have another child and still go through different kinds of tests with another child. Could be more susceptible to illness, or it could be a child who's more creative than the previous. Whatever it may be, the mother's still going to go through new levels and new levels of motherhood. If she's conscious, it'll be a really powerful experience. A lot of humans, they just kind of try to pack them all in and make them the same, all the kids, because it's too inconvenient for me to go through new levels and new levels of consciousness. When I studied martial arts as a kid, one thing I got was, I was asked immediately, the master saw that in me I was a teacher. So they said, you catch on immediately. So he said, I would like you to assist teaching. I was assisting when I only was in it for months. And but I got to say that I learned fast, and all of a sudden I knew the techniques. I knew everything. I was the like, I was really it. I mean, I got a black belt and all that kind of stuff. But I got more. Not the training that I adapted quickly. I became a black belt because I learned it quickly, but I became more of what they called a master eventually in martial arts. I became more of that when I actually taught other white belts, other yellow belts, other green, because every time I took them through it, I refined my own inner this belt and that belt and that belt. That's what happened. And I noticed it. I'm like, wow, I mean, I'm becoming better teaching than I am just listening and doing. In the process of teaching it, oh my gosh, and so my students were really, really good. The only challenge with it at the end was, as a kid, it was okay to kind of learn that. I wanted to, like the TV show Kung Fu, wanted the philosophy and the coolness of all that, the movement. But all too often in martial arts, there's really just bullies. There's a lot of that goes on in anything like that. So that didn't really turn me on. So I got out of it after X number of years. I don't remember how many years I did it. But I did get promoted all the way up, and I did become these glorious names they put to it, which I've never even talked about or I don't think mentioned before. So it's not like a braggart thing because I tore up my certificates because I don't practice it. If you don't practice it, you shouldn't claim to be that thing. I remember George Harrison once said, they said, George, are you a great guitarist? Do you think of yourself as a great, this is in his later years. And he said, no, I'm a good guitarist. He said, a great guitarist has to be somebody who walks around with a guitar all the time, constantly, refining, constantly. He said, I don't really care about refining. I know how to play it. I'm good. That's good enough for me. He said, now ask me if I'm a good gardener, a great gardener. He said, yes. Ask me about rhododendrons. This is what he said. Because he loved his garden every day. He was in his garden. He was experiencing God, himself, spirit, the earth, everything in his garden. He didn't have that kind of an experience with a guitar. To him, that's an instrument. And it reminded him of fame and blah, 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 that he thought was not necessary anymore. So that's what you could think about is, just you have to experience and become. That's why I always use that word integration. You integrate, to grate into yourself, like grating cheese, you grind into yourself all that you learn from that experience, and that's mastery. It's not just by hearing about it or thinking about it, theorizing about it. You become that thing. So chakras, they're beautiful, they're fantastic. God, to see the colors and the energy, but also what's the biggest wow is the light, the source behind all that. That's what's glorious, the glory of God. So many masters and Moses and so on depicted with these halos and auras. That's what that stuff's about. If you ever look at a lot of old art pictures about Moses, he actually has two horns right here. And the word horn, it's kind of funny because the word horns was because the painters were translating from old script that said Moses had two horns. So they went, well, obviously they have to be here. That's where typically you would imagine it. And the horns actually, the same word translated properly, it meant lights. So he had two lights in his head. They were not here now, if you think of them as lights. Now you would know that they're here if they're up in the skull. So you'll actually see, to artists and to theologians, and they see this art and Moses with horns, that's all taken to be so as fact, but it's actually a misinterpretation. It's beams of light that he had coming from him because of his choice to find God. And when Moses went up the mountain to find God, it was him moving up his initiations of his 7 chakras. Not to say he didn't also go up a mountain, he did. But the up the mountain outside was symbolic of going up the mountain inside. And when he goes up the mountain inside and he communes with God and he receives the 10 commandments, 2 tablets. The 2 tablets are the 2 petals, one of each side of the third eye. So these tablets, the wisdom that he received inside when he went up, communed with God. Burning bush, that's when his hair was glowing. His head was glowing. It's the burning bush is a symbol. It's a metaphor, but it's happening up here. And he sees the 2 tablets, one on each side of the petals of the third eye. And he sees the wisdom, thou shalt not kill. He's receiving that. It's not actually God up in the heavens beaming fire down and carving it into rocks. It does happen that he has these tablets, but it's happening in here first. And then the phenomena of it being materialized in actual stone tablets. But the stone tablets represent the 2 sides of the brain, gray matter, gray tablets, and the 2 petals of the third eye. So it's wisdom being brought to manifestation, the wisdom of each petal being imprinted onto the gray matter of the brain right in the left hemisphere, then imprinted onto stone. And it's pretty cool if you think about it, because all of a sudden things start to look differently. Moses up the mountain and God, communion, and things look very different. And this is what you and I experience when we're faithful to our path and we make it up the ladder. Jacob's ladder is another Bible story. Jacob's ladder is the chakras. He goes to sleep, his head on a rock, and he starts to have a vision of the variations of the kingdoms, the sort of the hierarchy of life. And he sees these variations. That's the ladder. They call it Jacob's ladder, but it's really the up the chakras kind of an experience that he had. And even Muhammad had an experience where he saw a vision of higher and higher beings. And he says in his vision, this is interesting because this is not spoken about very much in the religion of Islam, nor do the other religions talk about things that were once there. They try to shy all that away and only go with something they can use to limit people's understanding. But in Islam, they don't quite get that or talk about it. But Muhammad himself said he had a vision of the different kinds of groups of people and different heights of consciousness. And the highest of the high he saw was Jesus. Even though you don't hear Jesus spoken of and respected as being the highest generally in the tradition or by the practitioner. But that's what Moses himself saw. He saw all the other forefathers of the world and so on. But Jesus was the highest of the high. And another one is, in Buddhism, there are stories of Buddha being asked, "Are you the final? Are you the one in, the grand?" He said, "No. A few hundred years from now, there will come one lighter skinned, etc., describing Jesus and where he would come from and what he would teach." So Buddha himself is handing you over to Jesus, saying he's the one to ultimately follow. But do you think Buddhists are going to often talk about that? No, not really, because they have something to protect. Even though they're not attached, they have something to attach to and protect. And this other religion has something, Judaism, they all have something that they can't let go of their thing. Judaism can't totally let go and say, yeah, this was the Messiah, because for all kinds of reasons. So Christ is the highest consciousness. Christ is the name of God in us. So when you say my I am presence, you mean your Christ presence. When you say you're Christ, you mean your I am. But some people don't like to use certain terms because of their past patternings, and that's a shame. But let's call it for what it really is. You are the living Christ, and you are developing the memory, the remembrance that you are that thing. So let it be. Okay. Thank you for listening. I pray that this has filled in some gaps perhaps in your understanding of what chakras are. There's, like I said, I wrote a whole book on it, and there's so much I could say about it, but I'm trying to just give a synopsis. So God bless you and thank you. Bye-bye.